Let me welcome back to the show former Congressman, now Attorney General for the state of Minnesota. Let me welcome Keith Ellison. Welcome. Hey, Keith Ellison.
How you doing?
I'm good. Okay, perfect. All right. We just heard Val Deming talk about this neck restraint, and there's a story that's out right now that Minneapolis used neck restraint rendering 44 times. Actually 237 times from 2015 on. 44 times people were rendered unconscious. 44 times from this neck restraint. People were rendered, and that was what George Floyd, while he was handcuffed for 8 minutes with that neck restraint move. And she's saying that they should ban it. Is that possible to happen? Is that something that you can make happen like immediately?
It's not something that I can just dictate. Let me tell you, but we can do something. One, the chief can do it. Two, in the course of a civil lawsuit, we might be able to enter a consent decree in which the city agrees to do that. The state legislature can do it. It is a doable thing, but I can't just do it all on my own without in some engagement by with other people in government. So it's not something I can just unilaterally do, but that doesn't matter. It can be done. City ordinance, state legislature, the Department of Public Safety, the Police Officer Standards and Training Board. I guess the point is there is a way, but but I cannot just unilaterally do it. But it can be done, and we can get it done, and it's a righteous demand.
What can you do? Because you left Congress, which many people thought, that was a power position. You could have run for Senate. You could have run, to become the Attorney General for your state. Why did you make that decision? And then what can you do? Why is that a power position that you're in right now? What is it that you can get done?
Well, one thing is that I'm eligible to be appointed to be the prosecutor in any case that happens in the state of Minnesota by the governor, or I'm eligible to be invited in to be the prosecutor by a county attorney, and that just happened in the George Floyd case. So that's one thing, but there's many, many other things. First of all, I represent every state, every board, commission, and agency in the state of Minnesota, over 100 boards, commissions, and including Department of Corrections, the Police Officer Standards and Training, Department of Public Safety, everybody. I'm their lawyer. I'm the governor's lawyer, the Secretary of State's lawyer, the state auditor's lawyer, and I also have what they call Parents Patriae Authority, and that authority allows me to initiate lawsuits on behalf of the people of the state of Minnesota because as long as it's in their public interest for me to do so. So that's how I sued Comcast, Juul. That's how we sued the big tobacco. That's how we gotten involved in the opioid litigation, is because I'm authorized to sue on behalf of the people of the state of Minnesota. Now, in all the pandemic stuff, all the executive orders, I'm defending them in court, and I'm enforcing them as well. And so that is another element of what I do. So we do criminal stuff, we do civil stuff. We represent agencies. As a member of Congress, I had a staff of about 18 people. Now I have a staff of nearly 400 people. It's an executive position. In Congress, you can say a lot, but you can't really do a lot unless you got 218 other people to go along with you. And as the Attorney General, I consult my staff and I listen to the public, but it's ultimately my decision as an executive officer. So those are just a few differences. And, I like this job more than I like being a member of the House of Representatives, because, as a House of Representatives, it was a great job and an honor to do the job. But I think that one of the best kept secrets in American politics is the state attorney general's office.
Interesting. So I was saying before we went to a break that your son Jeremiah, back in 2015, was at a protest following the killing of Jamar Clark. And
That's right.
there's a photo that went viral with him standing in front of police with them pointing a gun in his face. And what did that precipitate your decision to roll up your sleeves and get involved in a different way?
Well, that did have a big influence on me. I mean, me and my kids are very close. Jeremiah is a very special guy. As you know, based on that incident, he confronted the sitting city council member about what he was going to do about police community relations, and the city council member said nothing because that guy was a thug, and I'm with the police on this. And so Jeremiah said, well, I'm going to run against you. And he did, and he won. And now Jeremiah is my city council member. So that's part of what happened. But, actually, it was a multitude of factors. One is stuff on criminal justice, but the other one is, I really, as Attorney General, am trying to help people afford their lives. I mean, if you can't afford your insulin, you might die, and you cannot afford your life. If you are subject to a greedy, unfair landlord, you cannot afford your life. I mean, and I'm suing all these people when they violate the law, whereas when I was in Congress, I would say, that's too bad. I'm going to pass a bill, and maybe I'll get a hearing, and maybe I'll pass. I mean, but that's always a long shot. Now I can just take them to court.
I love it. So, where were you when you first heard about the killing of George Floyd?
I was at home at the time. It was very, very late, early in the morning. I saw the video. I was utterly shocked by it. And so by 8:00 that morning, we were figuring out what we were going to do, and so that's kind of how that proceeded. I mean, I tell you, one of the things I did as Attorney General is over the course of 2019, I teamed up with the Department of Public Safety Commissioner, who's an African-American man by the name of John Harrington, and we had a working group on stopping deadly force encounters with the police. And we had police on the commission, we had citizens, we had the ACLU, we had the range, we had everybody there, a lot of people of color from different backgrounds. We had everybody throughout the state of Minnesota, and we came up with some really great recommendations. And then when we tried to start getting the legislature to pay attention, they were like, it was not easy, put it like that. Then COVID hit, then we ended up not being able to pass any of that stuff. The sad reality is that we need real permanent reform when it comes to policing. And maybe now get something done. It's such a shame that it took George Floyd's life to even make it a possibility, and we still haven't even done it yet. But the good sign is that some Republican members of the Minnesota State Legislature have said to me that they're ready to work now. They're ready to come together. They're ready to help. So I hope that that's true. And if it is, maybe we can get something done. I feel that I feel that if we don't get something done, I'm not willing to let Mr. Floyd's death have been in vain. We're going to have to make social justice change on this for his honor, in his honor.
We're talking with Attorney General Keith Ellison from Minnesota, also author of My Country 'Tis of Thee. I only mention that because I published that book. And so we have a little bit of history. We're here with Drew McCaskill, the Drew McCaskill. He is a crisis manager, and he has some questions as well.
Hey, Drew.
Attorney General Ellison, I'm glad to talk to you. My question for you, though, is, you talked about opposition to getting something done around, law enforcement and these instances of police brutality. What are the biggest challenges to it? What are the biggest headwinds? I mean, we say, well, let's talk to our city council, let's talk to our mayor's office, let's talk to the head of the police, let's talk to Congress. What's holding us back from getting it done? Who do we need to have as our allies, and help us understand who's against this type of reform?
Well, let me just credit you with asking like the $64,000 question, right? That is the question. And here is the unfortunate truth of the matter. Because police brutality has become racialized, a lot of white folks just don't see it as their problem. They think it's something that happens to someone else. So for some people, it's like, well, we're with the police. For other people, it's like, well, I'm sympathetic to you, but what were you doing at the time? Because the police have never bothered me. And if they bothered you, it's because you must have been doing crime. Don't tell me about police brutality. And, if you do, I'm going to tell you about, well, obey the law, right? And that attitude is prevailing, man. And, that's why video is so critical because, I'll tell you this way back, and I think this is in our book here, Karen. When I was a law student, I was protesting police brutality. I was 23. I was younger than Jeremiah is now. And I had been on TV protesting police brutality. And one of my law school classmates says, well, Keith, this is a white lady from the suburbs. She said, I saw you on TV complaining about the police. And I had an encounter with the police just yesterday. The police told me to pull over. I was happy to do so. They told me that the belt from my winter coat is hanging out of my door and that I should open the door and pull my coat in so that it doesn't get damaged and that I should then have a nice day. That's my idea of the police, Keith. These brutal, bad police that you're telling me about, I don't know what you're talking about. The police are the people who help you. And I told her, we live in the same physical space, but two different worlds, because if the police stop me, and I'm thinking that the minimum is going to happen to me is I'm going to get a very expensive ticket, and that's if things go super well. If things go average, I'm probably going to be provoked and insulted, and if things go bad, I might get beat up, and if things go really bad, I might get killed. And so to her, she had no reference point for that. Now, I will say, and this may surprise you, most people killed by the police are Caucasian. Now, the numbers are disproportionately people of color, but the raw numbers, most people who die at the hands of the police are white. But like COVID-19 and like welfare and like so many other things, the white working classes are victims of these things, even in higher numbers than people of color, but they don't think that they are. So we hear that, COVID-19 has a disproportionate number of people of color affected. Well, still the raw numbers of people who get and die from COVID-19 are still white people. Most people on welfare are white people. But because our idea of welfare as a welfare queen is some black woman in Chicago, they don't think of getting food stamps as like them. Well, it certainly is them. And police brutality is the same way. Did you ever watch that show, Dukes of Hazzard?
Yeah.
Yes.
The premise of the show is two white guys getting chased around by the police. That's what the whole show's about, right? And then they get into the general and they get in chases with the sheriffs, right? Did you ever see the movie Smokey and the Bandit?
Burt Reynolds.
The Smokey is the troopers. They're not the good guys in that movie. There's a lot of culture around how white people run. I mean, at the trailer parks of this country, trust me, when the squads roll into the trailer park, it's not good news, right? But somehow our fellow Americans kind of think of this as our problem, right?
Keith Ellison, you are connecting dots right now.
And so that's we've got to help our fellow Americans understand that when the state uses excessive force against you with impunity, then you are starting to not live in a democracy. You're living in a police state. So I mean that's really the issue.
Well, let's get to that.
Who's not helping us? A lot of if you go to Republican legislature, a lot of them are like, forget about it. The police federation is on our side. You talk to the Democratic legislators, a lot of them they might support your bill, but they want to water it down. You know what I mean? And so we end up with not much reform at all. I mean, think about New Jersey. You want to get even get a bill that allows for racial profiling, data collection. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't, very difficult to get that kind of reform. So, I mean, and everybody's for it, and everybody's sympathetic, and everybody wants to help, and nobody's willing to do anything. So, that's on the Dem side. And that's on the Dem. I mean, Joe Biden needs to explain his program to stop police brutality. And that's just, this has got to become a campaign issue. And now that he needs your vote, this is a good time to ask him.
Absolutely. But there's something in between that. I think the people in the streets are not in the streets because of what you just talked about, because that's more inherent and is more subtle. I believe people went into the streets, number one, when Chauvin wasn't arrested immediately. And they're still in the streets because there are 3 other officers that we witnessed obstruct Mr. Floyd from having his life. 3 of them were on his body and the other one was standing lookout. 3 of them are still free. When can we expect the arrest of the other 3 officers who were involved in the murder or the death? Because the family just released the autopsy. The initial autopsy said that that initial autopsy also made a lot of people angry. But now it comes back that it makes sense that he died from asphyxiation due to neck and back pressure, compression. That makes sense. Not the initial thing that I don't know who released that. Was it the police chief or was it? I mean, it was crazy. Where are we with the arrest of those 3, and what's your response to the autopsy results that the family just released?
Well, let me just say this. If I was not in charge of the prosecution of this case, I will be able to offer candid, free opinions on all that. But it's my responsibility to ensure that this prosecution is not only fair, but viewed as fair. If I start making public comments about, the evidence, that is going to put the defense attorney in a position to say that there's a rush to judgment, that I was not fair, that I predetermined things. So I'm not going to be a politician who tries to dodge. I'm going to admit that I must dodge for the sake of the case, right? The rules get different when you are the investigator or you are the prosecutor. That's why it was fine for the mayor to say arrest those people, because he didn't have to investigate or prosecute the case. But when you're and even earlier this week, I could have offered a more candid opinion. But at this point, I will say that I am in touch with the folks and we are going through the evidence. We started doing that this morning, and we are going to charge the maximum accountability that we can, and everyone who is culpable. But for me to start saying definitive things at this point might put the case in a position where somebody could accuse me of rushing to judgment or letting public pressure as opposed to the evidence guide the outcome of the case. So I'm going to respectfully ask you to let me just do what I must do as a prosecutor in this case.
Oh, that's fair. I mean, we watched Marilyn Mosby in Baltimore with a case that, she came out and said everything right and could not get a conviction. And it was a debacle on so many levels. And it wasn't totally her fault, but I get there's a lot of public opinion. There's a lot that can be utilized, and we're still dealing with, this is a nation of laws. And I know you're a fantastic lawyer. So I'm going to definitely respectfully, I hear what you're saying.
Karen, let's not stop there. People will remember Walter Scott, who, if you look at the video, he clearly appeared to be executed. The jury hung on that, and nobody got convicted until the federal government brought a civil rights case. I'm old enough to remember Rodney King, when the Rodney and the Simi Valley jury acquitted in that case. Let's talk about Philando Castile in Minnesota just a couple of years ago. The jury acquitted in that case, and we saw this man shot on live stream FaceTime video. I know that people saw the video and they're sure that what they saw is what they saw. But what I'm saying is that a good defense attorney, and you can better believe this cop's going to have a very good defense attorney, is going to look at the chain of prosecution and try to break every single link and hope one of them cracks and the jury says okay. And you should also know, and I already sort of mentioned this a little bit, the jury's not going to be people who are in the protests, because if somebody comes up on the jury pool and says, oh, yeah, I was in the protest, probably the defense attorney going to strike them, right? And so we're going to have a very diverse jury pool, and not all of them people are going to be folks who would see the world the way you and I do. Some of them may be the kind of folks who feel like, look, the police are here to help me, and I have a hard time believing that any police officer would intentionally kill someone. Now, that person, if they say it, might get struck too, but some of them won't say it. They'll say, I'm open. I can, and then they'll just, let their life experience kick in, and then make a decision not supported by the evidence.
Like the man that hung the jury in the Walter Scott case.
Right. So what I'm saying is, whether you're talking about Walter Scott, Philando Castile, whether you're talking about Trayvon Martin, which is not a cop but kind of a quasi, police law under authority, these cases are hard. And the public that sees the tape is like, well, what are you talking about? It's obvious to us. And yet it's not easy at all. Now, I'm not saying it's not possible. There was an officer successfully convicted of murder here in Minnesota about last year. Mm-hmm. So it's possible. But,
yeah, because he was black and the victim was white.
I hear
that's
you.
Me. That's me saying that, Attorney General.
Right. But what I'm trying to say to you is that, well, let's find out whether that's what. Let's find out whether that was. I mean, Minnesota gets a chance to either confirm or disprove that. You know what I mean? That's what's going down right now. This state, our country, our state has a opportunity to see if it can deliver equal justice, right? And we're up to bat on that. And so it's my job to make sure that we don't swing and miss. So that's what's up.
A.G. Ellis, I keep hearing so much commentary about many of the people who were arrested in protests were not actually from the state of Minnesota, that there were all this influx of people from outside of the state who were impacting the peacefulness of the protests. And I just want to get some perspective on why do you think that is? What do you think that's about? What is the law in Minnesota going to do to either investigate that or rectify it?
Well, let me just say, nobody really knows where some of these people are from. Also, nobody, not the president, nobody really knows exactly what the political ideology or persuasion of these people really is. But I can tell you that there have been a number of pieces of photographic evidence of people who do not look anything like any protester you've ever seen.
Right.
They're dressed in all black. They don't have on a COVID mask. They have on a tear gas mask. Mm. They're carrying black umbrellas when it's not raining at night. And they're breaking things. They're throwing incendiary devices in. These fires, they're setting fires. They're doing arson 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, when the protesters aren't even out protesting. They're not wearing T-shirts. They're not yelling slogans. They're not sitting in the highway blocking traffic, to force the society to listen. They're on something else altogether. Some of the video that we've received has been taken by protesters who are like, wait a minute, why are you busting out the windows in the AutoZone?
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why are you doing that? What's that about?
And why do some of the protesters from different parts, protesting in different parts of the country, look the same and are dressed the same? I mean, I feel like there were like so many of these dressed in all black with the tear gas wrap around the face mask, the backpacks on their chest. We saw that in some of the protesters who were doing stuff in L.A. everywhere. Right.
Well, now, until these people get arrested and they get interrogated, it's going to be extremely difficult to know what's your ideology, where are you from. Now, I don't know these people are not from Minnesota. I know that they don't have anything to do with the protests, and the behavior that they're doing is being associated with the protests, and the behavior that they're doing is arson, and the whole narrative in the country now is violent protests justifiable based on police brutality or not? And my thing is, wait a minute, all the protesters I know, even the worst of the legitimate protesters is breaking windows. That's the worst of them. I mean, that's the worst thing. But these people aren't just breaking windows. They're committing massive arson against institutions in the community. Why would a left-wing protester go into the AFL-CIO building in Washington, D.C. and try to burn it down? Why in the world? It just makes no sense at all. And so that's so there is some clear agent provocateur behavior going on.
Yeah.
But Karen, I gotta ask your forgiveness, dear, because because I gotta hit it. But
okay.
My brother, wonderful meeting you. And I actually have to ask y'all to excuse me at this time.
No problem. Thank you so much, Attorney General Keith Ellison, the state of Minnesota. Don't be a stranger. I'm sure you'll be back because it's not going to stop.